Okay, I'm ripping this in one take with several jump cuts for bits, but for the most part this is just going to be one shot. I'm going to attempt to explain the branded deck post support for December, which includes Quem, Despian Luluwalilith, and Albion the Sanctifire Dragon. So this is the current version of the deck that I'm running. I played 8 games so far in the Duelist Cup. Just came out today. It's currently 7-1. And this has been working exceptionally well. I haven't really bricked out most games. Everything's been mostly playable. My one loss was to random bullshit, but going second, of course. Anyway, so I'll quickly go over, because most of this is stuff we've had. So I'll start by going over the new support in order: Quem, Sanctifire, Lulu. And that's the order of importance as well. Lulu is a cool card, but unfortunately very cuttable. Alright, so Quem. Quem has, this is written in parentheses, so it's called a clause, meaning this is always active on the card, including when it's in your deck, and, you know, the word always here is very literal. It is always a Dogmatica in Despia, which means that she can be gotten off of branded opening, and she can be searched with Despian Tragedy and other Despia-related effects, as well as Dogmatica, which is why Nadir Servant has spiked up in popularity. I don't like Nadir because it is really bad going second, so I don't run it at all. So Quem, if she's normal or special summoned, which is very easy to do, she can send a Fallen of Albaz or many things in the deck that mentions it from deck to graveyard. And then, other effect, if a card leaves, just leaves, which is one of the easiest conditions to fulfill, especially since you're playing branded, it works symmetrically. So if you do it or they do it, except during the damage step, of course, you can target Fallen of Albaz or anything that mentions it in your graveyard except her, and then you can special summon it. If she's on the field, you would probably never get her anyway. And then, of course, they slap a hard once per turn on this. So generally what you'll do is you'll get Quem one way or another, such as during your turn 1 setup, you can dump Titaniklad. Titaniklad at the very bottom here. It has an end phase effect, and you can special summon a Dogmatica, and she is a Dogmatica, or Fallen of Albaz. Of course, you would just summon her in like defense or whatever. And then she would then proceed to trigger because she was special summoned, and then you can dump a card, and then you're good to go. The best dumps for her are things like Cartesia is quite nice if you don't have a Cartesia in rotation yet. Albaz himself, if you don't have an Albaz in your graveyard, this lets you not a true quick effect, but it allows you to get Quem to summon Albaz, and then Albaz can eat something. And it responds to extra deck things, so more often than not, you'll see this trigger and go, oh hey, I can Albaz that, and then Albaz effect triggers because he was special summoned. You discard a card, and then Mirror Jade calls for any of the extra deck monsters, and it's like, you know, Quem, dump Albaz, Albaz sits in the graveyard, and then during their turn you do Quem again, and then summon Albaz, and then Albaz effect triggers, and then you get Mirror Jade, and, you know, you have Mirror Jade. So Quem is just a overall ceiling increase to the deck and consistency increase. She's above and beyond the best new card that we got. We only run her at 1 copy because the deck's already so full and you only need 1 copy, although you could easily warrant running her at 2, especially if you're running the Grasses greener version. Alright, so that's Quem. Next is Albion the Sanctifire Dragon. He's Fallen of Albaz plus any light spellcaster. Light spellcasters, that's Cartesia and Quem, basically, is what you can do to make this. So, for stars, it can't be used as fusion material. That is relevant, especially in the mirror, because super poly effects in Branded are very common and in general. And this just says, okay, you can't use this as fusion material. It very rarely inhibits yourself because you want to keep this on the board. It's a very powerful card. It also has targeting protection. Can't target it, or at least your opponent can't. Thankfully, it's not symmetrical. It's just one-sided protection. And then he's got some once per turns on him. During their turn, you can target 2 monsters in any graveyards. You special summon both of them, 1 to each field. So this is very powerful. It is deceptively powerful. It doesn't sound incredible at first, but it is incredible. Like Quem, because I'll use Quem as an example. She can special summon a Fallen of Albaz monster or something that mentions it. So, like, she can get back Mirror Jade. Like, let's say they kaiju away your Mirror Jade and then start doing stuff. Quem can just get it back and then Mirror Jade's reset. This is just any monsters, 1 to each field. So you can use this to disrupt something that they're doing. You can just give them garbage. You can protect yourself from evenly matched. So they'll go to the battle phase, make sure your trigger in the game is set to on, and then you can throw something worthless, whatever your most useless card is, onto their board, and then you just leave it there in like defense mode, and they can't do anything. Evenly matched stipulates that your board has to be empty to perform it, so they've wasted their first main phase, and now they've wasted their battle phase. Aside from that, he can just summon Albaz, you know, as if we didn't have enough ways to do that. He can just summon Albaz, or he can summon, you know, basically anything. And then he also has this extra effect that is good, but is often forgotten. If he's in your graveyard, and of course you've already properly summoned him, because that's how reborn effects work, you contribute 4, kind of, you know, like a kaiju effect, and then you have to form like a plus sign almost on the field between the 2 EMZs and the 2 central main monster zones. And if you tribute all 4 of those, he comes back to the field. So it gets rid of 2 of your guys and 2 of their guys with positional requirements that are thematic. It is... Oop, I thought I clicked on it. It is the spots on, like, Branded and White. It's the EMZs and both the centrals. Alright, so this is overall just a really good card. Because he special summons anything, it is terrifying. The elephant in the room is Gimmick Puppet. So I don't play this myself because I dislike the playstyle in general, but basically the TLDR of this is that you can get Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, and you can throw it onto their board in like defense mode, and then they're just screwed for the turn basically, because nobody worth talking about plays Gimmick Puppet. I've never seen anybody play Gimmick Puppet. Gimmick Puppet doesn't even play this card. They should just ban this card because it's just only used in degenerate strategies like this. The reason why I don't play Gimmick Puppet Nightmare is because this card, for starters, it adds a brick to the deck. If this card's in your hand, other than being discard fodder, it does absolutely nothing. And then the other problem is that this is so vulnerable to disruption. The reason why it was a problem before is because Branded Expulsion, which is now banned, Branded Expulsion, what you could do is, this is banished and or in either graveyard. So you would have Gimmick Puppet Nightmare in your banish zone, and you can't hit, and then they can't hit it with like a Bystial, and then it happens like super guaranteed. Now it's a lot less consistent as a result. That's also why my Bystial count is so high. I'm on 3 Saronir, 1 Magnamhut, and a Druiswurm. That's just for generic shenanigans with Graveyard. Light and Dark is very popular right now, and I'd say Branded is extremely likely to be the current #1 deck. Alright, so that's Albion the Sanctifier. Incredible card. Just an incredible card. Now for the least potent, but still very... It's the top 3 of the new stuff. Despian Luluwalilith. So a lot of people who don't know Branded will see like Synchro and they go, why is a Synchro in here? The reason why we play Lulu, or can play Lulu I should say, normally, and not just use her for like her dump effect or whatever, is because she is a Despia. Being a Despia means that Gran Guinal, the Dust Dragon, you can special summon a Dogmatica or a Despia from your extra deck, and she's a Despia. So what'll happen is Gran Guinal will trigger its effect to special summon and tag out, basically. Previously, we were using Quaeritis, and you still can. I'm on Super Poly, so I've cut the card for space. But this was what people were running before, as well as Proskenian, right? This one too. But now I'm on Lulu because I like Lulu. So Lulu, you can make her normally with a level 4 tuner and 1 or more non-tuners. The easiest way that we would do this is that you could use like Cartesia, which we can recur back to the field repeatedly, in addition to like any of the Albaz fusions. And that's your, 4+8, or Lubellion, or what have you, because it's generic. It's just a generic 12. Anyway, once per turn, if a card leaves the extra deck, except during the damage step, you can make all monsters you currently control gain a 500 attack, which is permanent. And then you can negate 1 face-up card on the field until the end of this turn. Notably, this is any card. It includes back row, floodgates, and all that stuff. More often than not, what will happen is you will, at some point during their combo, Gran Guinal will trigger. And then you tag out to Lulu. And then at some point, they will summon something from their extra deck, which will do a thing, and then Lulu will trigger. For example, let's talk in the mirror for a second. Let's say they make Albion the Branded Dragon. This has left the extra deck and then immediately triggers an effect. You Lulu in response, and then you can negate the Albion's currently activated effect to try and fuse something, and then it's negated. So this is just a generally good card. The fact that it's a Synchro is sometimes relevant, but also not really. Now, it also has an additional effect if you happen to have this in the graveyard during your end phase, like all the Branded cards tend to have. If she's in your graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can special summon a light spellcaster monster from your hand or deck whose attack equals its own defense, and of course they slap a once per turn on these. These two both qualify. They're 1500 1500s. So both Cartesia and Quem qualify for Lulu. And then just to go through the deck, so that's the new stuff. That's the new stuff, and what you can do with it, at least in a broad sense. The deck is very non-linear and has a lot of room for skill expression. So I'll quickly go through the deck. Tragedy is tragedy. So this section is for people who have never played Branded or have not played for a long while, or what have you. So Despian Tragedy, this is a generic searcher that is both a Despia and searches for branded spells, traps. It has it's a searcher. Maxx C is Maxx C. Fallen of Albaz, we play this at 3 because the deck mentions him repeatedly, plus he of himself is actually a pretty good card. Aluber, the Jester of Despia, this is another Despia that searches for all branded spell traps. And he also has this graveyard effect people tend to forget about, where he pops back onto the board and negates something. Mercourier mentions Albaz, so we can search him off of things like Branded Lost and Quem. And then he has a hand trap, or hand and field trap effect, where he can be sent away and he negates a monster effect. And then if he happens to be banished, you then proceed to search Fallen of Albaz or a card that mentions it, except another Mercourier, and then add it to your hand, which can be a Quem, a Cartesia, or what have you. Springans Kitt. Springans Kitt has a special summon clause in which she can special herself, and she will then proceed to grab you any of your branded spell traps from basically anywhere, and then put them in your hand and cycle back one of your cards. Good extender. It's a okay starter, not where we want to be, but she can just, like, you can just normal summon Kitt, grab Branded Fusion, activate Branded Fusion, hope for the best. But yeah, overall a solid card. Cartesia. Cartesia is probably Cartesia along with Granguinal. These have to be mentioned together. This was likely the card that was the main turning point of making Branded from a mid-range deck to a more combo-oriented deck, as well as massively increasing the skill gap of the deck. If you control Fallen of Albaz or it's in your graveyard, you can special her. And then she has a quick fuse during the main phase, and then she fusions for 8 or higher fusions. 9 times out of 10, you're likely going to fuse her plus something you don't care about, or better yet, something like Saronir that you want to touch the graveyard, and then you'll make Granguinal, which has an effect, of course, and then things happen from there. It's very variable. I don't want to get stuck on Cartesia for too long because talking about Granguinal is its own thing. Quem is Quem. I explained Quem. Magnamhut. This is probably, it's the best Bystial overall, but Saronir is Branded's best Bystial, but when Bystials go in general, Magnamhut is the best one. There's a reason why it's at 1. I don't think I have to explain the Bystials too much. This is the one, they all have the same effect where they banish a light and a dark from either graveyard, and they can function as a hand trap if the opponent has monsters. Magnamhut's unique effect is that he pulls dragons to your hand. That can be Albaz, any of the other Bystials, and Lubellion, who's also another Bystial, as well as Albion the Shrouded. So both Albazes and all the Bystials can be gotten from that. Saronir. Saronir is a deceptively extremely good card. If it touches the graveyard at all, he can send any other Bystial or a branded spell trap, of which we have numerous targets. I'll go over those as we get there. Namely, Branded Sword and Branded Retribution, Retribution being the big one. Druiswurm. This is the most cuttable Bystial. Basically, this is... if it gets sent to the graveyard for some reason, you can target a special summon that the opponent controls and then send it to the graveyard. And then, of course, that's got a once per turn. Albion the Shrouded, it counts as Albaz in the field or graveyard. That comes up sometimes. And then it can cycle branded spell traps. So, let's say you have this in your hand. You can activate its effect, dump something like Retribution or Sword or Branded Fusion after you've already dumped Retribution with Saronir. And then it cycles itself back into your deck and then draws you a card. It is a surprisingly good card. It can also do that effect from the graveyard. It also has a clause on how it can summon itself, but who cares? Nobody does that. Ad libitum. This is quite cuttable because Quem kind of took his job. I'm still running it because I still like Branded in red into Chimera with ad lib, as well as Predaplant Dragostapelia. Overall, people know what ad lib does. His main effect kind of doesn't matter, and is never used. It's mainly just his cheat effect, where he summons back a Despia or an 8 or higher fusion, typically Mirror Jade or whatever is used to fuse with him. So, like, you'll brand it in red, target something, ad lib, and then you'll make, like, Chimera or Predaplant Dragostapelia, and you'll include Mirror Jade as one of the materials, and then Mirror Jade comes back, and because it's a soft once per turn, it's reset. Bystial Lubellion. I'm on 2 copies because Bystials are pretty good right now. He has a special summon clause, which does not activate an effect, it just happens, in which you contribute a 6 or higher Dark Dragon monster, that's all the Bystials, as well as Albion the Branded Dragon, and, you know, others. But, he has a, so you special summon this guy, and he can place any one branded continuous spell trap from your deck to face up on the field. Our target for this is Branded Loss. Branded Loss is a just nice thing that fishes things out of your deck and prevents things from being the activation negated. Lubellion also cycles itself. He'll dump himself to your graveyard and then pull a Bystial to your hand. Our main target for that is, of course, Saronir. Foolish Burial is Foolish Burial. Gold Sarcophagus is Gold Sarcophagus. So the primary targets for these are Despian Tragedy, Tri-Brigrade Mercourier, but there are instances in which I've done like Bystial Saronir as well as Albion the Shrouded with like Foolish Burial. Between the two, Foolish Burial is much more important. Gold Sarcophagus is borderline cuttable, but I like having access to like normal summon Aluber or normal summon Quem more, because both of these will trigger Tragedy's graveyard / banish effect, as well as like Mercourier, who only functions off of being banished, does not do anything when it just touches the graveyard. Fusion deployment. These come, you don't have to craft these, they come from the Cyberdark structure deck. So 500 gems apiece, you get, 1,500 gems, you get 3 your copies. We have 2 targets for this. The way it works is that it reveals a fusion monster from your extra deck, and then you special summon from your hand or deck one of the materials mentioned on that monster. We have 2 for these, so we have all of the Albaz fusions. Which one you reveal doesn't matter. And then you can special summon Albaz, and then Albaz will do his fusion effect, which is quite good. Or, and what really made it popular was Granguinal the Dust Dragon, who mentions Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous as a fusion material. So you'll fusion deployment, and then you'll deploy Cartesia, and then you'll proceed to play with Cartesia. Her quick effect fuse allows you to have like infinite impermanence negation for like the entirety of your combo. So like this is a targeted negation, and now with Cartesia on the field, you're just like, cool, if you target something, I'm just going to fuse it away to dodge. Branded in white. This is a polymerization effect that has a added stipulation that if Fallen of Albaz is used as material from your hand, field, or graveyard, you can also banish materials from your graveyard. So it allows you to cheat and use your graveyard as fusion material, which is quite relevant for one of the main lines of the deck, as well as just extension in general. Branded Fusion, I don't have to explain Branded Fusion, everybody knows what this thing does. This lets you fuse from deck using making any of the Fallen of Albaz fusions. Generally, it's Albion, the Branded Dragon, or Lubellion, the Searing Dragon. Those are your big 2 targets. As well as we can, if, let's say they Maxx C in response and you don't want to give them a bunch of cards, Albion, the Sanctifier, and Rinbrum are both extremely good ways to play under Super Poly. You can just Branded Fusion, go straight into Albion, the Sanctifier Dragon, and you're good to go. That's it. And then you'll do like Branded Fusion, Albaz, and Quem, and then make Sanctifier, and then like you can kind of set whatever you have and end your turn, and that's it. Anyway, Triple Tactics Thrust. This is a generic staple. There are so many normal spell traps in the deck, it's kind of just incorrect not to run this. Fool it, just to go down the list. This is normal, this is normal, this is normal, this is normal, this is normal. And then this is normal, and this is normal. So, we have a lot of targets for Thrust. Thrust is really great because it plays against Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom, as most people know, negates Branded Fusion because it tries to pull stuff out of your deck, sending stuff from deck to graveyard. So Ash can negate Branded Fusion. So if you have Triple Tactics Thrust in your hand, what you can do is you can play Branded Fusion and then get negated by Ash Blossom, let's say it happens. And then you have Thrust, so you'll then proceed to Thrust, and you know Thrust is going to resolve because they already did Ash Blossom. And then you set Fusion Duplication, or whatever you want, but this is a going first scenario. You do Fusion Duplication, and then this, I'll go over this card now because it's very relevant for Thrust. It lets you target any Fusion or Polymerization normal or quick play spell in either player's graveyard. You banish it, and then you proceed to copy it and apply it to this trap. And of course, it's got a once per turn, doesn't matter, we only play one. So that works for Branded Fusion, and it works for Super Polymerization. So, 2 very potent targets for you to potentially Thrust and then Fusion Duplication into. Branded Lost. This has a protection effect that the activation, namely it's the activation, not the actual effect, so it'll stop Baronne de Fleur, but it won't stop Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. But basically, this is a card advantage engine with a side of protection. Whenever you fusion summon stuff, it lets you pull an Albaz or an Albaz or calling monster, or something that shouts out Albaz, such as Mercourier, Cartesia, like a third of the deck, really, or a quarter, I guess. Just really good. It's also our main target for Lubellion, and the only one we really play. Bystial. There are other targets, namely Branded Beast and Branded Regained. These are the other continuous targets for it, as well as the new Etude of the Branded. I'm not on these. I believe I'll just quickly go over it. These cards, namely Branded Beast, Branded Regained, this is more of a Bystial control kind of thing, or a scenario in which you want things to be recycled back and bouncing the Bystials back and forth, such as resetting Druiswurm to do his targeted send effect or what have you. I'm just not on enough Bystials to warrant running these, but you could easily just add 1 copy of Branded Beast if you want to and call it a day. Although I certainly would not add Branded Regained unless you have, like, I would say at least 1 or 2 more Bystials in here. Namely, Baldrake is the one I would... If I had 1 copy of Baldrake in here, that would probably be the difference maker of me adding Regained. Alright, Super Poly. This is an old card from GX. This lets you fuse using everything on the board, and it can't be responded to. The fact it can't be responded to is extremely relevant. So a lot of boards, like let's say Dragon Link, will end on like Borland. They'll end on this guy. Or no, not him. It's this guy, and where's the 5? Am I dumb? Where's the 5? Oh, here's the 5. Alright, I was looking at it right. So they'll end on like this guy and this guy. Right? These two. And then they're like, haha, I have 2 negates. What are you going to do about it? And then you just throw down Super Poly and make Garura, because they're, you know, this is the most generic Super Poly target of all. And then now you've just destroyed their turn 1 board and for 1 card and a discard. And you can discard like Saronir, Retribution, Sword, etc. This is just a really, really, really good card. And in my opinion, our best board breaker. Alright, now we got Called by the Grave. Everybody knows what this thing does. Branded Opening. You can discard a card, and then you can summon a Despia. Up until now, Aluber has been the primary target of this, but remember, Quem counts as a Despia. She is now a target for this as well, which opens up various lines. Branded in High Spirits. This is used most often when you have access to normal summon Aluber and Fallen of Albaz in your hand. You can normal summon Aluber, get Branded in High Spirits, or you can, you know, do these, dump this, get him, or just summon him outright. Get this, and then you'll play this, reveal Albaz, send Albion the Branded to the graveyard as well as Albaz, and then you'll get Springans Kitt to your hand because she mentions Albaz. And then because Albion the Branded Dragon is in your graveyard, you can now special summon Kitt by her own effect because you have a fusion monster that mentions Albaz in your graveyard. And then the Kitt effect triggers, and then you go get Branded in white, and then you can link off Kitt plus Aluber into Predaplant Dragostapelia, which should be a banned card, but it's not, which is any 2 effect monsters. And then now that Kitt is in the graveyard, you can brand it in white using the Albaz you discarded plus Kitt herself to make Rinbrum, which is Fallen of Albaz, plus any Tri-type monster, you know, Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast. Kitt is a Beast. So you make Rinbrum, you let Rinbrum sit on the board for a second, and then you Verte send Branded Fusion away, Verte plus another Albaz from your deck, make Mirror Jade, likely in defense mode of course, and then you Mirror Jade effect, activate, dump Titaniklad, or whatever you want, but ideally, realistically, it would be Titaniklad in this kind of scenario. Or no, not. I'm misspeaking. It could be anything. It would likely be any dump. It doesn't matter. It can be any dump. Basically, this lets you double dump. So you dump another thing that mentions Albaz. And then you would negate it with the Rinbrum. And then the activation is negated. But, and then you bounce nothing. And then, because that's how this works. And now you have 2 dumps. There are other ones like Brigrade. That is a really good one if you're running it. And then that can get like Mercourier to hand. That's what we were doing up until Quem was released. Anyway. And then now you've presented a board in which you have Albion in the graveyard plus like other stuff, right? And you'll set like Branded Retribution or something, and your Mirror Jade is still live. So this is just, I've seen some people run it at 3 copies. I do not. I think this is just something you search for when you have the line available to you. Branded in Red is Branded in Red. Everyone knows Branded in Red. Branded in Red is a quick play spell, and it targets a Despia or Albaz in your graveyard, and then you can summon one of your guys. Most of the time what people do is they'll either target Ad Libitum or maybe Tragedy or something, pull it to their hand, fuse using their board into like Chimera or Predaplant Dragostapelia. I'd say these are the big 2. But now we have Albion, the Sanctifier as well, so now it's like a 3rd target we can do with this. And then things happen. If you did Ad Lib, you'll recycle Mirror Jade back, and so on and so on. This is a quick play, so what most people do is they'll set it with Albion during their end phase and set themselves up for their turn. Branded Sword. A lot of people don't know what this card is. I think it's underrated. If you don't like Branded Sword, just run an extra copy of Branded Retribution. Or just run it anyway. I'm trying to keep card count down. I don't like going above 46 if I can help it. Branded Sword. The first part I've had matter in literally 1 game since I started playing the card, so largely doesn't matter. But its other effect, which is far more important, you can, when it's in your graveyard, you can banish it and then target one of your banished monsters that is Fallen of Albaz or mentions him, and then add that monster to your hand. So a lot of times I'll have lines in which I have banished Mercourier, and I will at some point during my combo dump Branded Sword and then trigger Branded Sword to pull Mercourier back to my hand, and now I have this negate effect sitting in my hand. Even before the end phase, which we would usually not get Mercourier to our hand like that until Brigran's end phase effect triggers, in which we get a Tri-Brigade, because Mercourier is a Tri-Brigade. This gets it into your hand before the end phase. Fusion Duplication, I went over this. Branded Fusion and Super Poly both qualify. Branded Retribution, this is a counter trap, meaning it can't be responded to except with other counter traps. This condition is very easy to fulfill. And then it lets you recycle things back into your extra deck. Namely, you'll hit like Albion and like Titaniklad or what have you. Or like Lubellion if it got messed up. Or Mirror Jade in your graveyard. Or the Mirror Jade on your field that you've already activated and other things have happened. This is a very versatile card. In my opinion, one of the better cards of the deck that allows it to remain playable despite Branded Fusion going to 1. And the reason for that is its second effect after this first paragraph. So this works like Branded Sword, except it's for branded spells and traps in your graveyard. So you'll banish this and then target any of your branded spell traps, and then you add it to your hand. So what typically happens, or what you can do is you can dump Branded Retribution with, let's say, Saronir, right? And then you can, during your combo or even before then, you can use Albion the Shrouded from anywhere that it's activatable from to dump another branded spell trap, in which case you would dump Branded Fusion or Branded in White in case you're fearing Ash Blossom and don't want to lose. And then you'll banish Retribution, pull Branded in White or Branded Fusion to hand or whatever you want, because it's all of the branded spell traps, and then you can just activate Branded Fusion, which is the strongest card in the deck. I know once upon a time this had one of the highest win rates per resolution recorded, although I don't know how reliable that data is. I know a lot of it for a long while in the TCG, a lot of branded players would say that if you resolve Branded Fusion, you probably won the game, even just resolving it one time. Branded Fusion is a terrifying card. being able to fuse straight from deck. And yeah, it gives you a fusion lock for the entire turn. That's supposed to be the drawback, but we have so many good fusion monsters, we just don't really care. Plus, Verte's legal, which means we can, like, plan B this and just rip it out of the deck. Konami, please ban Verte. Please ban Maxx C, and give us back Dragoon. Give him back. I want my Deviant Art Dark Magician. Thank you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Alright, so extra deck. Mudragon, Garura. These are super poly targets. Namely, we care about these because of their monster types. So, super poly makes these with a lot of common end boards. Super poly is also phenomenal in the mirror match because a lot of our cards mention like Albaz plus something or like Cartesia plus something. So, Mudragon does have an effect. A lot of people forget. But he gives targeting protection for things that share his attribute, and he can change his attribute. So, like, you can summon Mudragon with, like, super poly, of course. And then you can Garura call light, or, well, you wouldn't need it for this, but you can call, like, dark, right? And then, like, they can't target negate your Mirror Jade anymore. Garura is two things that match, but have different names. So, example would be, like, what do I got? Let's say, just in this deck here, Lubellion plus, well, this can't be fusion material. I needed a better example. Branded is a lot more vulnerable to Mudragon than Garura because a lot of our things are different types. So, like, you'll see, like, Mirror Jade's a worm. Albion's a dragon, but he's dark. Lubellion's a dragon, but he's light. I guess it would be, like, Titaniklad Mirror Jade or something. Just as an example. But, yeah. He has bad attack, good defense. If you happen to swing at them, they'll take double damage. And if it ever touches the graveyard, you draw a card. Which is okay. He's namely used for the fact that he of himself is a dark, which is relevant. So, I've had games in which I've done Super Poly, discard Albaz, make Garura, using like this was against Dragon Link, so I used both their Borals. I made Garura, and then because Albaz was in my graveyard, I summoned Cartesia, and then Cartesia fused with Garura, who is a dark, to make Granguinal, who calls for Cartesia plus a light or a dark. Got a draw, and then I think they conceded after I did like one more effect. Because it was like games, you know, the game's over. I super polyed away their only two guys, and I'm literally comboing in their face, so they just scooped and left. Alright, Predaplant Dragostapelia, he calls for a fusion and a dark. This thing is basically targeted negation, really good card. He has 2700 attack, which is fairly large. He's certainly not the beefiest monster we summoned, but he's a good one. Titaniklad, this has an effect a lot of people forget about. Namely that he can't be affected by the activated effects by stuff from the extra deck during the turn he was summoned. That's a mouthful, but basically extra deck monsters can't mess with him the turn he's summoned, and he gets big, so he tends to be able to run things over. Be right back. Pause. Alright. So, oh man, I've been going for a hot minute on this, already at the 44-minute mark. This is a complicated deck. So, Titaniklad. He gets big, and then in the end phase, he can summon Quem, basically. That's the only Dogmatico rerun, or Fallen of Albaz. A lot of the Albaz fusions, or at least the original ones, like Titaniklad, Brigran, Sprint, would say like, hey, you can summon Albaz or something there, or whatever is related to Albaz in the art. Such as Brigran calling out Tri-Brigrade. Albion, this is like one of the better extra deck cards by a good margin. He's our primary branded fusion line. You'll send Fallen of Albaz plus any light monster. Most of the time it'll be like Lubellion, and Albion qualifies to be tributed by Lubellion to, you know, then summon himself and then perform his effect. Albion the Branded Dragon is basically a big guy who stays on the board and then proceeds to fuse using your hand, field, or graveyard. And then if he's in your graveyard during your end phase, he proceeds to set or add something to your hand that's a branded spell trap. Mirror Jade. Mirror Jade is kind of our big boy of the deck. He has been and still is, in my opinion. He can dump any card that mentions Fallen of Albaz from your extra deck as a material, so all of the Albaz fusions, basically. And then he will banish something. Non-targeting banish, by the way. And then this does not have a hard once per turn on it. It has what's called a soft once per turn. So if you're able to get Mirror Jade on and off the board, you can perform that effect several times. Lubellion, the Searing Dragon. This is our other branded fusion line. Our main branded fusion line, I should say. He's any dark plus Fallen of Albaz, so like, you know, Despian Tragedy is generally the main one, but there are cases in which you'll do like Mercourier instead, but most of the time it's Albaz plus Tragedy, and then Tragedy hits the graveyard, so now its effect triggers, and you get like add Libitum to hand, or Aluber, or Quem, right? So still a very good card. We only play it at 1 copy because we only need 1 copy. And then once it does a cost discard, so it won't trigger like Despian Tragedy and stuff like that. Will trigger Saronir though. It fuses, and generally you'll use it plus Albaz to like make Mirror Jade or other various options you may have. Granguinal, this came out with Cartesia and uses Cartesia as a fusion material. If you fuse into this, you get to dump any level 6 or higher light or dark from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. We have so many targets for this. You can send any of the Bystials, namely Saronir. You can send Albion the Shrouded. You can send Bystial Lubellion. You can send basically your entire extra deck. There's just so much here. And I'll show that in a replay, but this card really kicked up Branded in terms of how far you can extend and like your consistency and stuff. Overall, like, astonishingly good card. It has a solid stat line of 25-25 as well, so it can't just get run over. And you can put it in defense mode pretty fearlessly. It also has a tag out effect, which I mentioned earlier. You can summon any Dogmatica or Despia from your extra deck. Our target for this is Lulu. But like I mentioned before, Quaeritis is possible. Next we have Renbrum. Renbrum has a quick negate effect. He has 2 effects that are quick. First, if basically an extra deck monster. If an extra deck monster activates their effect, you can negate an effect and then return a monster on the field to the hand. It can be any monster. It can be your monster, their monster. Does not have to be the thing you negated, which is generally how effects like this work. This is a bit more unique though. But yeah, this lets you negate a guy and then bounce anything. And that is an optional bounce. You don't have to. And then during your opponent's turn, while this card's in your graveyard, so let's say they got killed, right? Or ran over or whatever. Quick effect, you can target Albaz in your graveyard and then special summon either that or this and then banish the other. So what'll happen a lot of times is you'll have one way we used to be able to play in the Maxx C is that we would play Branded Fusion, like do normal Aluber, get Branded Fusion, play Branded Fusion, and then they Maxx C in response. So you go, okay, well, I don't want to give them a ton of cards, so I'll make Rinbrum with Albaz and, like, Mercourier, right? And then you make Rinbrum, and then Rinbrum, even by himself, is a negate for most decks that have to deal with it. And then when he's killed, you can proceed to banish him and then summon Albaz, and then Albaz will eat something and then turn into, like, Mirror Jade or whatever, right? So this used to be our go-to, like, play under Maxx C line, and you only give them one draw, which is still not great, but, you know, what can you do? Albion the Sanctifier, this is the new guy. I explained him in the beginning. But yeah, this is an incredible card, and yet another way to play under Maxx C and be able to play around, like, evenly matched and things like that. Guardian Chimera, we used to run this at 2. We're running it at 1 because you only need 1. Games are just so fast now, the second one probably never matters, plus the extra deck is so tight now we just don't have room for it. So he uses a combination of your cards from field and hand, of which both have to be at least 1. So, like, 2 on the field or 1 on the field, and 1 in the hand or 2 in the hand, whatever adds up to 3. And then you get to pop and draw depending on how much you used of each. And then he also has a protection effect, where if you used Polymerization, you can't target him. Not relevant for this deck, but in older patchwork versions, this was relevant. Very good against, like, Kashtira when it first came out. Lulu is Lulu. I explained her at the start of the video. And Verte. Verte is an incredible card that should be banned, but isn't. It's banned in the TCG and OCG, but not here, so we'll abuse it until it's banned. I think that Branded getting these cards, namely Quem, Sanctifire, this might be the tipping point for finally getting Verte banned, because a Duelist Cup just started and Branded is in a premium position to be the best deck of the current format. Branded right now is just downright terrifying. Most people know what Verte does. He's a generic Link 2. And you can target something on the field and turn it dark. It itself is a dark. So that lets you... That actually does have a purpose. Doesn't just sound random. You can Super Poly and then make Mudragon or Garura using Predaplant Verte Anaconda. And then you get rid of... you literally targeted something and you get rid of it, which is likely was the intended use of that effect. Then it has another thing, where you can pay 2,000 to send a Fusion or Poly, normal or quick play spell from deck to graveyard, and then his effect turns into that effect. So for this we have, of course, Super Poly, like I was mentioning in the previous play, or Branded Fusion. And then you would send Branded Fusion, and then you make straight up Mirror Jade. You'll send Albaz from deck, and then use the Verte on the field, and then make Mirror Jade. Or you can just make Sanctifier, or which is probably even better, and so on and so on. Alright, so that's all of the Branded cards. I know that was very long. It was like 54 minutes. So I'll show a replay to show the cards in action and talk over the replay. Alright, so load into a replay. I'm going to play this on fast forward, and I'll talk over it as I go. So my opening hand is Maxx C, Albaz, Opening, Lost, and Thrust. This gives me a pretty clear line in which I can go for Branded Fusion. If they have Ash Blossom, I have Thrust to get Fusion Duplication out of my deck, and then play on their turn anyway. And Branded Lost is just Branded Lost. I'm going to play the card, and I will benefit from the fact that I have played it. And also having Branded Lost in my opening hand means I don't need to do Albion for Lubellion and all that. I already have Branded Lost and can skip getting Lubellion. So, gonna get Aluber and discard Albaz. I discard Albaz because having Albaz in the graveyard's good. I grab Branded Fusion. I activate Lost first because it's going to give me a card. And then I sent Tragedy and Albaz, which is typical. I'm not really getting responses from them. It's not prompting them for responses at this point in the game. So I'm like, okay, I don't need this thrust. So I'm going to discard... a lot of things are going to happen, but... it's going to be like a chain 3. But I'm just going to dump this thrust to Lubellion's cost. And then here, you know, I grab Cartesia, I grab Quem, and I fuse for Mirror Jade. I get to special summon Cartesia because Albaz is still in the graveyard from before. That's why I dumped him to the graveyard. And I haven't normal summoned this turn, so I can still Quem. Just normal summon. Quem activates. I'm going to send Retribution for follow-up later. Because that will let me get Branded Fusion back to my hand as a quick effect. I already have Branded Opening in my graveyard for destruction protection. And then I'm going to fuse her, Cartesia, and Aluber together to make Granguinal. And I'm going to, because a card left the extra deck, you know, I literally just summoned it. Because it left the extra deck, I'm going to use Quem to summon Cartesia back. This will let me fuse on their turn as well, because hers is a quick effect. I'm going to end the phase, Branded in red. And here I'm feeling pretty good. I have Maxx C in hand. I set Branded in red. I have Despian Tragedy in my graveyard as my Branded in red target. I have Quem. I have a live Mirror Jade. I have Granguinal. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good. This is a very hard to break hand. So, they attempt to go to the battle phase. This is a misplay on my part because I could, if you turn your trigger to on, you can let them go to the battle phase and do this inside of the battle phase. I learned this afterwards after asking about it because I wasn't sure. But you can let them go to the battle phase. The replay, of course, doesn't show it. But basically what happened here and why I triggered Branded in red is because it told me my opponent was attempting to enter the battle phase. And looking at a 6-card hand and they did no hand traps to me and had no interaction, I sniffed out pretty quickly that this is going to be evenly matched. So this is dodging evenly matched using Sanctifire. So I made Sanctifire, and then because I did Chainlink 1 Branded Lost, which is in response to the fact that a fusion happened, and I'm going to put stuff on the field, Aluber to my side, Tragedy to theirs. I'm going to get Mercourier, which is live with its negation effect, because I have Mirror Jade. He mentions Fallen of Albaz as material, and I'll put Tragedy on their field because it won't do anything. For them at all, pretty much. And then with Aluber, I get Branded in white for my next turn. They normal summon Exosister. So they go to main phase 2, which I think they could have stayed in main phase 1. They just went to battle not realizing what I had done. Then they realized, oh, Tragedy's on my board. I can't evenly match now. And then they proceeded to main phase 2. So I did misplay this, but it looks like there was nothing they could have done anyway. So they normal summon Ellis for Exorcist, and they're like, alright, I'm done. So yeah, very potent deck. In my opinion, easily top 3 in terms of competitive power level. It's very consistent. It plays under Maxx C very well, which is a rampant threat on Master Duel. It always tends to end on something. The only downside of the deck is that it's so damn expensive. If I go back to the list, hold on, I'm gonna jump cut. All right, back in the list. And this is a no Super Poly version, which I wanted to show in the video as well. changes here. I cut Super Poly. You see the deck size went down by 3. And then I replaced the targets of Mudragon and Garura with Sprint and Quaeritis, which are just really good cards. And yeah, so as you can see, the deck is astonishingly expensive. I believe quite a few of these cards should have been SR instead of UR. Like, Cartesia should have been an SR. Granguino could be a UR, because they came together. Quem could have been an SR. Lubellion is absolutely a UR. He's like the final boss. Mercourier didn't need to be a UR. This could have easily been an SR. Tri-Brigrade doesn't even play this card, I think, because it's basically a branded card because it mentions Albaz. Fusion Deployment, thankfully, can be bought out of a structure deck, but yet again, that's another 3 URs you need. Even if they're from a structure deck, that's still 1,500 gems. Branded Fusion's at 1 now, but, you know, when it wasn't, you needed 3 of this. Thrust, not mandatory. You can cut this card, but it's so good, you're kind of wrong to not have it. That's another 3 URs. Branded Lost, this could have even been a rare. Like, I don't get why this was an ultra rare. That just, it felt so excessive. You get like 2 Call by the Grave, so you can hit like Ash Blossom and Maxx C. And like the extra deck is what really kills it for people, because like up until then you're like, okay, this is like a normal amount of URs, but the extra deck, there are so many. You got Titaniklad, you have 2 copies of Albion, you have Quaeritis, you have 2 copies of Mirror Jade, 1 copy of Lubellion, Granguino, Rinbrum, Sanctifire, Guardian Chimera, Lulu, Verte Anaconda. There's 2 cards, Sprint and Dragostapelia. There's 2 cards out of the 15 card extra deck that aren't ultra rare. And you can't play these in like anything else. So it's a hard sell for people. It's like, other than Guardian Chimera and Verte Anaconda, none of these are played in any other decks except Branded, because they're all like Albaz, like Albaz, Despias, Albaz, Cartesia, plus a Chaos type, Albaz. This is a generic 12, but it plays so well with the Albaz and branded stuff that you'll likely never see it in anything else. And like Verte's Verte, which should just be banned anyway. And even if it was banned, right? You would likely just switch in another ultra rare, such as Alba Lunatus, which is an ultra rare. So yeah, if you can stomach the cost of the deck, then I think it's a very good deck. Now, in the video, I couldn't really go over like this line of play, or you do this, then this, then this, in like very strict terms, because the branded deck has become more about how the cards interact with one another and sequencing, rather than like, oh, you do, because it used to be, and a lot of people remember this, I'm sure, it's like, oh, you do Branded Fusion, send Albaz and Tragedy, you get Ad Libitum to your hand, use Mirror Jade to banish like your Aluber or something, right? And then like you pitch Albion, and then you set Branded in red, and then during their turn you target the Tragedy in your graveyard, and then you have Ad Libitum in your hand, and you fuse it with Mirror Jade, and you make Chimera, and then like Chimera does his thing, draws you 2 cards, and then Ad Libitum puts Mirror Jade back onto the field and resets his banish, and like that was a tier 1 strat, and that's it. It's Chimera plus Mirror Jade, with a draw 2 that probably got you like Maxx C or some other hand trap like Ash Blossom back when we could afford to run it with deck space. And that was a tier 1 strategy for like months. And it was literally just Chimera plus Mirror Jade with like a super simple linear line of play. But the deck has become so complicated now. It is so hard to play. Unless you really like Branded, because the cards look cool. Like Mirror Jade looks super cool. Sanctifire looks super cool. Like they're big dragons, for the most part. Like this one looks really cool. Like a lot of these cards, they're all just, there's like chains on them and shit, and shackles. Like all these cards look super cool. So like the archetype has a lot of like cool factor, but the problem is the archetype is so hard to play. Pretty, you know, plain and simple. It's very hard to play Branded. So I think if you're a new player, and this is like a closing thought, what I would do if you wanted to play the Branded cards is I would wait for what's called the Chimera archetype, the Chimera illusion stuff, and then that pushes the deck back towards being more of a mid-range deck. The deck has grown so far and has so many ways to extend at this point that it's like a mid-range combo deck. It's not a full-blown combo deck. We're not that bad, but it's almost a combo deck. So yeah, that's an overview of the new Branded stuff and where the deck currently is. The deck is very challenging to play, has an extremely high skill ceiling, and the mirror matches are extremely skill dependent. One wrong card activation can just lose you the game on the spot. So do not recommend this for beginners. There are much easier decks you can pick up and play, like Vanquished Soul or Math Mech or something like that, which are like the other two best decks. Branded is very favored against both of them. The Bystials make Math Mech cry, and Branded just whips on Vanquished Soul. Like Mirror Jade has a non-targeting banish, so they like try and swap out their monster, and then you just banish the thing that came onto the board, and you know, so on and so on. So we're super favored against them too. Overall, I really like the deck, and I do think it is the best deck in the current format, or at minimum is top 3. But that's where Branded is. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. I'll have timestamps in the comments, of course, so that parts of the video can be jumped around. But yeah.